Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So to celebrate the release of Dune, I thought it'd be a fun idea to go through my top 5 Denis Villeneuve films. Yes, we are going to be diving into my favorite films from this incredibly talented director. Now, I produced a similar video last year, this time around for Christopher Nolan movies. So if you're curious to hear my thoughts on some Christopher Nolan films, you can go ahead and check out that video. But I would love to make this kind of video for a bunch of directors. Like, there are so many directors out there that I would love to make a top 5 video for, but unfortunately a lot of them have like filmographies that are as long as my arm. Like, a lot of them have been working for decades. Their filmographies are so long, and listen, the release schedule these days is jam-packed. The release schedule is crazy right now, especially for the end of 2021. I don't have time to be watching the entirety of Ridley Scott's filmography, unfortunately, okay? Try as I might. However, when I saw that Denis Villeneuve's filmography is rather short, I was pleasantly surprised. I was more than happy to take on this task. And so today we are going to be talking about the top 5 films that he has produced, my favorite films out of all of the ones that I have watched, and it's almost all of them apart from a few shorts and a few French films. Like, we don't care about those. But before we dive into my thoughts on all of that good stuff, as per usual, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel and make sure you turn on your notifications so that you can be told when I upload next. Now, without further ado, let's get into my top 5 Denis Villeneuve films. So first of all, I did just want to start off with a prologue for my thoughts on Denis Villeneuve as a director in general. I think I was first introduced to his work when I watched Arrival, which is many people's introduction to the world of Denis Villeneuve and his directing style. And we will get into my thoughts on Arrival later on, but what I would say about the director is that he very much reminds me of a Christopher Nolan, speaking of, as well as a Sam Mendes, in that he has these really big conceptual ideas, and generally speaking his films are just so very well made. Like, they look stunning, incredible cinematography, they feel cinema worthy. So I really do think that he's made a name for himself in terms of audiences going into his films expecting excellent quality filmmaking, because that's what you're gonna get almost consistently. And even though I did compare him to a Christopher Nolan, one criticism that I've always had for Christopher Nolan, and if you've watched my Christopher Nolan video then you already know this, but I feel like even though he is of course an excellent filmmaker, a master in his craft, blah blah blah, to all of you Nolan fans, okay, even though I recognize all of that good stuff, I do feel like he's a little bit robotic in his filmmaking. I feel like his films are often devoid of emotions, of three-dimensional characters with actual emotions that you can actually feel empathetic towards. And I feel like that's something that Denis Villeneuve may excel in. I feel like that's something that he has been able to pinpoint in his filmmaking, and perhaps Christopher Nolan can take notes from him from that part. Although I won't say that that's equally applicable to all of the films in his filmography. And finally, when it comes to trying to reach the status of a Christopher Nolan, I feel like what Denis Villeneuve needs is a franchise. Actually, I think it's undoubtable that Christopher Nolan reached the heights of his career when he joined the Batman franchise, when he produced the Dark Knight trilogy. That's when, you know, average audiences were introduced to the director and were able to name the director in a way that they hadn't been before he had tackled the Dark Knight. And I feel like that's something Denis Villeneuve also is trying to seek, and he may find this in Dune, who knows. I feel like Dune is a little bit more niche than Batman okay, or he may find this in another future franchise. But either way, I feel like he needs something to kind of take him up a notch and make him more recognizable to general audiences, so that they can be attracted to his works in a way that people flock to see the newest Christopher Nolan film. Because at the end of the day, even though Denis Villeneuve is known for his auteur filmmaking, his box office results aren't the best. His box office draw isn't strong at this point in his career. So even though the quality of the films are there, he does need that name recognition. He needs something to boost up those box office numbers so that we can get more of these incredible works. So with all of that being said, let's get into my top 5. So at number 5, we have Sicario. Now, Sicario is this incredibly intense crime thriller film that delves into the involvement of the US government and its governmental bodies like the FBI, as well as some private contractors with murky backgrounds, okay? Exploring characters that are seemingly good, seemingly evil, and then a few that are very clearly in that grey area. It's just a really intense film delving into that topic, and it has become very well known for one scene in particular, and that's the scene that takes place right at the US border, where you have this incredibly tense chase sequence leading up to the scene, and then you just have this mass of traffic where these FBI agents and these other US operatives are tracking down members of this cartel, and it's just like there's no sudden move kind of moment, and there's this tense wait to see who will move first, to see who will make the first move that will trigger an all-out war at the US border. It's just the tensest moment ever. Denis Villeneuve directed the hell out of this film in general, but in particular that moment, because it is the definition of tension. Now, I would say that the entirety of this film does a great job in maintaining that intensity. I won't quite say the same level of intensity as that particular scene, but still, the whole film is just intense. It does such a great job of really showing us the gravity of what's going on here, the implications of what's going on here, and also this complex web of lies, of manipulations, of secrecy that Emily Blunt's character is trying to unpack, because she is an FBI operative. She's someone who, you know, follows the letter of the law. She's someone who expects other people to be following procedure, but then when she is thrown into this scenario working with people with these murky backgrounds and sometimes even conflicting motives, she realizes that a lot of these procedures, a lot of these laws don't apply there. Like, they are working with a completely different set of rules, and it shows. And she really struggles to come to terms with that. Now, alongside Denis Villeneuve's excellent directing here, we also have brilliant performances from Emily Blunt, from Daniel Kaluuya. I didn't know Daniel Kaluuya was in this film. I didn't know Daniel Kaluuya was in this film. Why did no one tell me? Why did no one mention anything? Anyways, but also Josh Brolin is incredible. Like, he is truly a badass in this film. And then you have Benicio del Toro, who's just like on another level. Like, he's just like on another level. He's barely human in this film, okay? And also, I will say another element that adds to the tension that's very well crafted in this film is the music. The score of this film is so intense. And there are also some very effective pauses and uses of silence here to again ramp up the tension. So next up at number 4, we have Dune. Now, at this point in time, I actually haven't filmed my review of Dune yet, even though it's likely to go up before this video. Just know that if you want further details on my thoughts on Dune, you can go ahead and check out my review on my channel. At this point in time, I know that people were very, very excited for this film. The original book is deemed as one of the most influential sci-fi novels of the 20th century. It's a source that a lot of other franchises have taken inspiration from, most notably Star Wars. So I completely understand people's excitement to see this book adapted. And as I said earlier, Denis Villeneuve needs a franchise attached to his name to take his career to that other level, so that people, you know, general audiences will become familiar with his name and with his work. And Dune could perhaps be that franchise, at least in theory. Now, like I said, I'm not going to be delving into Dune all too much because I'm going to be doing a separate review for the film, but I'll just say overall, when it comes to Denis Villeneuve's adaptation of the book, it's not complete. It's not complete. It's even called Dune Part 1, and you know, that's fine, I guess, but it's tough to judge this film based on the fact that it's just half of a story, or perhaps even less than half of a story. Now, it's not as if this is the first film to do that. There are, of course, films within franchises that do tell part of a story, but I do feel like there are ways to do that without the film feeling like just entirely a setup for another movie. I feel like that's the main issue when it comes to this first film, is that it just feels so much like a setup. Near at the very beginning, we're told that this is just the beginning, and I guess I should have taken that as gospel when Zendaya said it, because this really does feel like just as we're reaching the peak of the story, the most interesting part of the story, we come to a halt. So when it comes to Dune, like I said, it's tough to judge it as a whole when really it's just part of a full story, whereas the other films in Denis Villeneuve's filmography feel whole, they feel completed, even films that are a part of another franchise. But aside from that issue and some other issues that I'll be delving into in my review, I do think that once again this has the Denis Villeneuve stamp of quality film making. First of all, the cinematography, wow. Like, truly, we're not skimping out on the wide shots, are we? No, the cinematography is incredible. I believe the cinematographer is Greg Fraser, I believe is how you pronounce his name. But stunning. Speaking of Star Wars, he did The Mandalorian. Stunning. He was really able to create this desert world, this desert planet that feels just foreign enough where you're convinced that it could exist in another planet as opposed to just a place on Earth, with this kind of brutalist architecture. First of all, brutalist architecture and I don't get along. I think it's so ugly. I hate brutalist architecture for the most part, and I understand that it's become this kind of cliche of what you would imagine a post-apocalyptic world or a dystopian world to look like. It's just covered in brutalist architecture. I don't know why, because we've already moved away from it, so like, why do we keep thinking that it's gonna come back in 1,000 years? I don't know, but good riddance. But brutalist architecture kind of juxtaposed against the sandiness, the desert, I think it's just stunning. It's just absolutely beautiful. Then of course you have the incredible performances with the incredible cast. I mean, what's not to love there? I feel like the film overall, like I said, it definitely meets the standard of excellence that Denis Villeneuve has become known for, but just structurally speaking, there are a few issues, as well as a few tonal issues, like the lack of emotion. Like I said, in the case of Sicario, that film is just so intense and so emotionally charged. The fact that he didn't employ even a little bit of that in Dune is kind of disappointing. So next up, at number 3, we have Dune's kind of companion, Blade Runner 2049. Now, this is what I meant when I talked about Denis Villeneuve stepping into another franchise-ish. If Blade Runner was really a franchise, I think it was just one film, right? But he stepped into another franchise to try and get his name out there and attached to a recognizable IP, but he didn't just do it in a very kind of vapid surface level way. He did it the best way possible. Like, wow. First of all, let's just talk about my history with Blade Runner. It's very short. I didn't like it. I didn't love the first Blade Runner. I tried to watch it when Blade Runner 2049 came out, and I was like, I don't like this. I do feel like I need to rewatch it, to be fair. Like, it's one of those where maybe I was in a bad mood, maybe I just wasn't feeling it, I need to give it another go. But because of the fact that I didn't like Blade Runner, I kind of slept on Blade Runner 2049 until I realized that it was part of Denis Villeneuve's filmography and I had to watch it for this video. And watch it I did. I was shocked. I was shocked and surprised, because whilst I expected this, again, film that would be void of all emotion, very stoic, very unfeeling, especially considering that our protagonist here is a literal robot, okay, a literal replicant as they're known here. Whilst I was expecting that, I got anything but that. This film is incredible. This film is phenomenal. I would say that the first 2/3 of this film is almost perfect. Okay, I really enjoyed Blade Runner 2049. I feel like a lot of the things that Dune kind of fails at are the things that Blade Runner 2049 excel at. First of all, we still of course have the beautiful world building with the gorgeous cinematography. Here we have Roger Deakins, just a master at his craft, okay? But we have the gorgeous cinematography, we have the really cool music, the really cool aesthetic, the brutalist architecture again. And this futuristic city skyline is also decorated with these cool holographs of Ana de Armas kind of just seducing random men as they walk by. So I feel like the city and the world really came to life in this one. But then you have the character of Kay, who's portrayed by Ryan Gosling, and like I said, he's a replicant, and considering his job, considering what his life is like and his existence is like, you wouldn't expect him to be an empathetic character, but he absolutely is. Wow. I truly loved how this film explored the character of Kay. I don't want to give anything away, but there are these twists and turns that this film takes that feel so natural. They don't feel forced at all. They come to the same conclusions that I came to. Like, I really believed what he believed, and so when things turn around, I was just as shocked as he was. But the pain that he exudes, the confusion, the lack of purpose, I think is just beautifully explored. I love this movie. I mean, we're getting into the top 3 here, so we're really splitting hairs in terms of what my favorites are from Denis Villeneuve, but Blade Runner 2049 has a special place in my heart because it shocked the hell out of me. I really didn't think that I would care for this film because I wasn't the biggest fan of Blade Runner, but man, like, talk about an improvement in my books, okay? Although, like I said, I will give the original Blade Runner another try in light of this. But then, speaking of Ana de Armas, I think they did a great job of utilizing this technology, the idea that she would be the model figure for a bunch of these holographic images, and then you have Kay, who's in a relationship with, you know, one of these systems that he has at home, and the relationship is like convincing. The relationship has heart. Why was I rooting for them even though I knew they were doomed to fail? Why was I rooting for them even though I knew it could never work? Honestly, like, Christopher Nolan can never. Christopher Nolan can never. And this is the part as well where I mentioned that Denis Villeneuve just does so much of a better job depicting female characters. Let's talk about this, okay? Let's talk about this for a second. Denis Villeneuve runs circles around Nolan when it comes to his female characters. They have complexity. They have important roles in the film, okay? And even though Ana de Armas is a love interest, it's just a different take on the love interest, 1. And 2, the chemistry between her and Kay is there. Like, her and Ryan Gosling really got along. You bought the relationship that they had. Even though it was doomed, I was very much still rooting for it, and it really touched my heart to see Kay, who's trying to pursue this purpose in life, even though he's not supposed to, even though it goes against his very programming, but he's looking for something feels off, and she is able to provide him with not all of the answers, but at least a feeling of relief, a feeling of home. And then of course you have the whole Jared Leto and that side of the story. I have to say that was the part that I was less enthused about. Like, I didn't really care all that much about that part. It kind of ties into yet another The One storyline, and even though I enjoyed the twists and turns that it took the character of Kay on, just on its own I didn't really care. There are also some tiebacks to the original Blade Runner here. Of course, Harrison Ford makes an appearance in this sequel, equal, and you know, the interactions that he has with Kay, especially in the context of that part of the story, are really, really great. I really enjoyed that. I find them to be very investing. But again, when it comes back to Jared Leto's side of the story, I'm like, yeah, I don't care. Don't care. I know this is a reference to something in Blade Runner, but like, don't really care about that part. And that's why I say that the first 2/3 are like perfect, and then the last third kind of leads into the Blade Runner aspect, and I'm like, oh, okay, you've lost me a little bit there. But unfortunately, Blade Runner 2049 suffers from the same ill fate as a lot of these great Denis Villeneuve films, in that it did not make a ton of money at the box office whatsoever, which is a great shame, because I do think that this film is phenomenal, and I know that a bunch of fans rallied behind it, but unfortunately it just didn't have the wide appeal to get those box office numbers up. So next up, at number 2, we have Prisoners. Now, like I said, at the very tippity top of my list here of Denis Villeneuve films, we're really splitting hairs to determine which ones will come out on top, but I have to say Prisoners is here not necessarily because of the cinematography or, you know, the class of filmmaking or anything like that, but rather just the very human story of this man who reaches a point where he will do anything. He will say anything, think anything, literally just do anything to save his child. And that is the character that Hugh Jackman portrays just superbly, because here we have yet another kind of crime thriller, but this time around it's centered on this small town where two young girls go missing, and you know, these children are hanging around in their neighborhood on Thanksgiving Day. You see the whole Thanksgiving shebang with Hugh Jackman's family and Terrence Howard's family hanging out. They are old friends and they're hanging out for Thanksgiving, and we're invited into their home at the beginning of the film, seeing the shenanigans with the kids playing around, the adults, you know, reminiscing on happy times, and it's just this very warm introduction into this story that completely falls apart, that completely becomes just ice cold when these two girls go missing. And like, honestly, this film took me on a journey. This film took me on a thrill ride. First of all, it does the mystery exceedingly well. Exceedingly well. You're always invested in the mystery. The way that it unravels itself means that you're always on the edge of your seat, wondering, trying to figure this out yourself before something terrible happens to these children. Then at the same time, you're thrown all of these like hurdles and distractions, as is the case for any great mystery. Some misdirects, some red herrings, and some may say that they would have seen the ending coming. I personally didn't until relatively close to the end, so I was shocked to see what actually happened. But I just think overall the mystery is so very well constructed to allow you to be intensely focused on what's going on, whilst at the same time dealing with all of these individual characters, where they're at during this horrific time, and some of the horrible things that they're doing to try and get answers of their own. So then let's dive into the characters themselves. As I said, Hugh Jackman plays a character who literally gets to the point where he will do anything. He will do anything to find out where his daughter is, like absolutely. And honestly, he gives the performance of his lifetime. I'm so upset that no one is talking about how great Hugh Jackman is in Prisoners. I'm so upset that no one is specifically talking about how great Hugh Jackman is in Prisoners. Like, people going on about Logan and going on about, you know, all of the X-Men films. Hello, have you seen Prisoners? Then you have Jake Gyllenhaal on the opposite side of this. He is a police officer who is dealing with this case, and he's also dealing with this parent who is just obviously reaching rock bottom, and he has to navigate that, as well as, you know, trying to figure out what happened to these children and coming across all of these red herrings and you know, boundaries that the case is bringing alongside it. And honestly, he does such a great job as well. He's a different kind of detective. He's kind of unhinged. He feels a bit more like a sketchy character, but he is thoroughly invested in this case. He's very good at his job, but all of the hurdles that are thrown his way just make it harder, and that's what makes it so investing to watch. But then we also get different perspectives on how these parents react to their children going missing. I mean, we're dealing with 4 parents here. Hugh Jackman is portraying one of the girl's father, and he just loses his damn mind. But then we have his wife who has a breakdown of her own, like she just cannot function. She stays in her room. I believe it's her room or her daughter's room. I think it's hers, but she just suffers from severe depression during this time. She's counting on her husband to fix everything, and that's kind of unfair to him as well, because he's just as much of a victim as she is to this horrible crime. And then you have the parents of the other child with Terrence Howard, who, you know, he's trying to go things by the letter of the law. He's trying to trust the police. He's trying to trust the process, but of course he's anxious. Of course he's terrified for what happened, what could happen to his child. And then we kind of have a little bit of a Lady Macbeth situation with Viola Davis's character. Yes, Viola Davis is in this film. What? I know. Anyway, we have a similar situation with Viola Davis's character where she's kind of whispering in her husband's ear, like, we need to do more, we need to do something, and she's kind of siding alongside Hugh Jackman's character until it reaches a point where she can no longer support or co-sign what he is doing. But yeah, it's really interesting to see these 4 different perspectives and reactions to this horrific crime. Overall, I just think Prisoners is so incredibly investing. I was on the edge of my seat from start to finish. I was wishing the worst fate imaginable for the culprit of these horrific crimes. I feel like that's by design, because the film is presenting you with these different reactions to this horrific incident, and you know, whether or not you fall in Hugh Jackman's camp or in Terrence Howard's camp, you know, depending on who you are. But it does also show you the consequences of those reactions, almost as if it's telling the audience that we know that this is a horrible, horrible situation, but how would you react? And do you think that your outcome would be better than theirs? So finally, at number 1, we have Arrival. Now, I would say that Arrival is the film that really put Denis Villeneuve on the map. In a world where we have an abundance of sci-fi content, we have sci-fi coming out the wazoo, okay? I feel like he was able to achieve the almost impossible in completely turning this genre on its head and giving us an entirely new perspective on it, an entirely new perspective on an alien invasion. Because here we have these alien creatures that land on Earth, and it's not this alien invasion that you would expect in any other sci-fi movie, where you have a bunch of these humanoid aliens coming at us trying to take over the world, and they can speak perfect English. They can speak perfect English, and they have the same political system, they have the same social understandings as we do, and so it's this very easy interaction, and we can understand that they're a threat because of it. No, there's none of that here. That's not a prerequisite for this alien invasion, because instead we have these creatures that are truly otherworldly, and with everything that encompasses, including more specifically language, the huge language barrier. And here we have Amy Adams portraying this, you know, main protagonist. Remember how I said that Denis Villeneuve is worlds above Christopher Nolan when it comes to female representation? Yeah, here's another example. Anyways, here we have Amy Adams portraying Dr. Louise, I think her name is, and she is a linguistics expert who is called in light of this alien invasion to try and figure out a method of communication with these aliens. And that's what this film explores. It explores her process of trying to come up with a method of communication with these aliens who have an entirely different way of communicating. Nothing is familiar about them, and I think, you know, that's something that is usually taken for granted, like I said, in other sci-fi films and television shows, because because, you know, they tend to be humanoid creatures, they tend to speak English for ease of the audience, and a lot of this stuff is taken for granted, but this is the stuff that this film specifically delves into and does it so well. so well. I remember watching Arrival and I was like, I can't believe I am so invested in a linguistics lesson. Listen, I used to be a fan of English language. Actually, I used to be very good at English language. But you know, watching a linguistics expert run around with whiteboards talking to these octopus-like aliens shouldn't have been as incredibly investing as it was. But it was at the end of the day. What can I say? I was on the edge of my seat from start to finish. First of all, before we tackle the plot itself, we have to talk about the filmmaking. Again, we have to talk about the incredible cinematography, the incredible production design and CG. I mean, that spaceship, that very unique spaceship that they designed for the aliens in Arrival is just stunning. Like, this kind of monolith style spaceship is incredible, and again, very different to what we usually see. Just a completely different interpretation of the genre. And then you have the design of the aliens themselves and their methods of communication. It's just so intellectual. It's just so intellectual. Like, it's giving, you need a certain IQ to understand. Speaking of this intellectualism, I would definitely say that it increases as the film goes because we delve into deeper and deeper themes as we go on. Themes surrounding human existence itself through the eyes of these aliens and the information that these aliens can bring to humanity. We also get to see how the world reacts to this alien invasion in very real time, but also in a very realistic manner. We see how at first the approach is very, you know, diplomatic. Obviously, you know, countries of the world want to have this on lock and want to have control over this, as you would expect in reality. But then as time goes on, we start to hear things about militarization. You see how tension starts to build up in global politics, in the world stage, as these, you know, world powers are trying to vie for control over this situation. So again, very realistic, very true to political theory, whilst at the same time juggling these complex philosophical themes surrounding human existence. You become invested in the character of Louise. Amy Adams gives the performance of a lifetime in this film, and many felt that she was overlooked during awards season, unfortunately, but she was just incredible in this role. And she was also backed by a great supporting cast here as well, with Jeremy Renner and Forrest Whitaker in particular. Like, just all around honestly, an excellent ensemble cast has become another signature of Denis Villeneuve. If you look at the casts of his previous films and some of the films that I've mentioned here, they're all great. Like, they're all stacked. But yes, the great performances alongside the incredible production design and cinematography and CG that kind of realizes these very unique aliens, on top of course, the excellent screenplay by Eric Heiserer, who did a phenomenal job in conceptualizing this incredibly complex story. I just feel like Arrival is one of the sci-fi films of our era. I really do feel like it is a timeless sci-fi masterpiece that completely subverts the genre and gives us something entirely new, an entirely new perspective on looking at extraterrestrial life and an alien invasion, as it were. So that's it from me. Now that I told you guys my picks for the top 5 Denis Villeneuve movies, it's time for you guys to let me know what your picks are down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch new videos coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.